We're going to start off this discussion of the adjective by simply reminding ourselves what it is that an adjective does. An adjective modifies a noun. That is, it changes a noun. In some ways makes it more specific, expands upon our idea of what it is, or limits it, delimits it. So for instance, we could talk about a dog, or we could further refine the description by saying the barking dog. And then we could even further delimit our description of the dog by the vicious black barking dog. You see, so each time we add an adjective, we narrow the range of possibilities. We change or modify what we mean by the noun. Now, also note in the last example, the vicious black barking dog, you can also stack adjectives. And so you don't just have to stay with one adjective. You can have a number of different adjectives. You can't have an unlimited number, probably because the mind cannot grasp or stack an unlimited number, but you can have, you know, a few adjectives that all modify or change our idea of what the noun is. In English, the adjective usually goes before the noun. So the red truck, the white duck, the large box, and so you see this pattern, right? The adjective goes before the noun. There are a few adjectives that don't, and we'll talk about those in a couple slides, but the adjective goes before the noun. So just as the adjective goes before the noun, it comes after a linking verb. So the truck is red, the duck appears white. You have phrases like this, and there's a number of these phrases over here. The milk has turned sour. So the adjective comes after the noun, and in this case it's called the subject complement. So it comes after the linking verb. Anyway, so just remember this. In this form, the adjective usually does not come before the linking verb, except in unusual constructions. Red is the color of my true love's hair. Okay, so I just kind of made that up. I don't know. It comes from something, but you see, so in that case, for emphasis, I placed the adjective first, but you'll notice it sounds a little bit unusual and not idiomatic or colloquial in English. There are some post-noun usages of the adjective, and so we see over here the examples that I've listed, and these are just a few. Usually these are idiomatic phrases. These are kind of fossilized and built into the language, and so we have the person responsible. I'm looking for the person responsible for this. Now note immediately that this is different from the responsible person. So I'm looking for a responsible person is more of a general situation, whereas the person responsible becomes much more specific, and in this case we're usually referring to somebody who's responsible for something bad that happened. And we also have other phrases as well, such as code red, grand theft auto, you know, the either the game or the name of the crime. And in this case, the auto would be the modifier. Okay. Nacho Supreme. What kind of nachos? They're supreme nachos, but we call them Nacho Supreme. You know, the supreme would be the adjective. Notary public. What kind of notary? A public notary. Okay, but in this case we put the adjective last. Private first class. What kind of private? Well, it's a first class private, but in this case, again, the adjective form comes last. And Paradise Lost, the name of the great epic poem by John Milton. What kind of paradise? It's a lost paradise, but the adjective lost comes after the noun in this form. So these are unusual, and they are usually locked into the language in their set phrases, but just something to keep in mind. Sometimes we can have phrases or even clauses that modify a noun. Sometimes these are called adjectival phrases and clauses, though they have other forms, and we'll see. In the first one, the man in the green coat is a famous writer. In the green coat is an adjectival phrase. It's a prepositional phrase too. In the green coat. We should recognize the in as being a preposition, and it's functioning as an adjective. The whole phrase, the whole prepositional phrase, functioning as an adjective here. He grew up in a town where he was born. So the town is the noun that is being modified, and the clause where he was born. And again, we should note that that this is a clause. It's got a subject and a predicate, a subject and a verb. He is being the subject, the pronoun subject, and was born being the verb. And this again is an adjective clause modifying town. So sometimes phrases and clauses can function as adjectives in a sense, though we can also identify them as in this case, in the first case as a prepositional phrase, and in the second case as a relative clause. Okay, but sometimes their function, their alternate function is as an adjectival phrase or clause. There's a small group of adjectives that only work with linking verbs, and I have a few examples over here. The monster is alive. You see, so I can say the monster is alive, but I can't really say I saw the alive monster, right? Okay, it just doesn't work. So this is the kind of adjective that only works with linking verbs. The princess is asleep. Okay, I can say that, you see. So we have a linking verb is, in both cases, the linking verb to be. But I can't say the prince kissed the asleep princess. That doesn't work. So something like alive or a word like asleep only works with the linking verb as the complement of the subject. And other adjectives like this are afraid, alone, aware. So he was afraid versus I saw the afraid boy. You can't really say the afraid boy. Okay, so anyway, so just remember some adjectives only work with linking verbs. Nouns can function as adjectives as well. So you can have a noun that modifies another noun. So the first noun is being used as an adjective. And examples of these are listed over here. You could say a foot race, a company store, a spaceship, a car salesman, dog food, production cost, a coffee cup. So in each one of these cases, the first word, foot, company, space, car, dog, production, and coffee, are nouns in their own right. But here they're being used as adjectives. So it'd be possible to say, I hurt my foot in the foot race. See, so the first foot is functioning as a noun. The second foot is functioning as an adjective that modifies race, that changes the race or limits the type of race, further defines what type of race was it. Was it a boat race? Was it a car race? Was it a bicycle race? And each one of those being nouns, by the way. No, it was a foot race. Okay, so anyway, just remember, nouns can sometimes work as adjectives. Verbs can sometimes serve as adjectives as well. And so you'll see the list down here. Okay, it's I'm kind of squeezed into the top part of the frame here because I needed room to build the chart. But anyway, so you see from the verb bore, as in he's boring me. Okay, he's not speaking of anything of interest to me, which might be the case with this grammar lecture, but I hope not. But you can see that he is a boring speaker. Okay, boring right there is from the verb form adding with the ing means something different from he is a bored listener. Bored, as in he is being bored. Okay, so you have a difference in meaning between boring and bored. In the same way, these are confusing instructions or confused students. So you see, so I think that we can construct a kind of rule here. If you use the ing form, that means that the noun that follows is performing the action, conforming the action of boring or confusing. Whereas if you have the ed form, you can think of that as being kind of in the passive voice, then the noun, as in the listener or the students, is in essence the object of the action, is receiving the action. So the students are confused by the confusing instructions. Okay. So, and again, you have the depressing situation or a depressed patient. So the psychologist heard about the depressing situation from the patient who is depressed, from the depressed patient. That is a frightening lion, or the frightened hikers, were confronted by the frightening lion. Okay. We had a disappointing result versus a disappointed lover, somebody who has been disappointed in love. Okay, so I heard your pleasing words. I am now a pleased parent. My child has done so well in school, and you're very kind to send me your pleasing words. Your words pleased me. Okay, so a difference between pleasing and pleased. And again, I heard the shocking news, or I read the shocking news in the newspaper. If anybody knows what a newspaper is these days, okay, maybe not. Okay, but I was a shocked reader. I was shocked to read that. Okay, so anyway, you can use verbs as adjectives, but they mean something different depending on whether you put them in the ing form or in the past participle form with the ed. Adjectives can also be used to compare. And how we divide these up is we either have two things that we're comparing, or we're comparing three or more things. And so we use slightly different forms depending. So I could say, for instance, Lord of the Rings is a better movie than Titanic. Now, please don't get mad. Please don't get mad if you don't agree with that. I'm just using this as an example. Okay, so and then you have the superlative, which compares three or more things, and we could say something like, some people say Muhammad Ali was the best boxer in the history of the sport. So best. So you notice we don't say he was the better boxer in the history of the sport, because there are many different boxers. Remember, three or more. He's the best boxer. And in the next couple slides, we'll break down the usage of the comparative and the superlative a little bit further. The comparative looks at two items, puts two items up against each other and compares them. Okay, and this form generally adds an ER. So of the two brothers, he is taller. She is smarter than her father. Johnny is faster than Tommy. Okay, so we have the ER form here. And remember, this is when we look at two items and compare and or contrast them. What we call the superlative looks at three or more items. And this form takes the EST ending. So of the seven brothers, he is the nicest. Of all the stars, Cyrus appears the brightest in the night sky. She is the best player on the squad. We call him Speedy because he's the fastest runner in the class. Okay, so it takes these forms take the EST ending. Okay, so we make a distinction between comparing two items, which is the comparative, and three or more, which is the superlative. There are some irregular forms in the comparative, and we have to just memorize these. And they are words like good and bad, less and much, and so I'll go through these. And so I'm bad, you are worse, but he is the worst of all. Okay, so notice the difference there. I'm well, thank you very much. Tomorrow I hope to be better, and next week I hope to be best of all. Okay, so you see, so good, better, best. Okay, or well, better, best. Okay. Less, I earned less than he did. Of the two of us, you earned the lesser amount, and she earned the least of all. Okay, so there you see some examples how those are used. Okay, and much, more, and most. Okay, I had much happiness at that time. I could have had more happiness if things had been different, but the most happiness I have ever had in my life has been when I met you. Okay? There you go. Okay. So you see, these are the irregularities in the comparative and superlative forms. Okay? So, and again, in the text, you will see more of these spelled out and more examples given. One thing to note is that the ER and EST ending are only used with single-syllable adjectives. And so I cannot say he is intelligenter than his brother. I can say he is smarter than his brother, but I cannot say he is intelligenter than his brother. That doesn't work, I'm afraid. And so what we use with multiple syllable adjectives is a word such as more or less. He is less intelligent than his brother. He is more intelligent than his brother. You see, so, and another example, just one more example, capable, the word capable. He is the most capable employee I have ever had. Or, he is more capable than most of my employees. Okay, more capable. So I'm comparing him against somebody else. Okay, he's more, Fred Jones is more capable than Ivan Smith. Okay, so he's more capable. That's two. That's the comparative. Or the superlative, he is the most capable employee I have ever had. So, so remember, when you have a adjective that has more than 3 syllables, you do not use the EST or the ER form. You use the modifying comparatives, such as more or most, less or least. So adverbs tell us how something is done, or where, or when, or in what manner. Okay, they modify the verb. They change the verb. They add to the verb. Adverb adds to the verb. So that's a mnemonic device. And if you find yourself remembering the difference between the adjective and the adverb, perhaps it would help you to remember that the adverb adds to the verb. So some examples that we have over here is the cheetah ran quickly. How did it run? It ran quickly. So remember, you can go back to the verb and it links with that. I worked on the paper yesterday. When did I work on the paper? You see, work on the paper yesterday. You left your keys there. Where did you leave them? You left them there. So, these are all adverbs, and he answered her kindly. In what manner did he answer her? Kindly, in a kindly manner. And so there I'm using kindly. When I say kindly manner, I'm using it as an adjective, but he answered her kindly. That modifies the verb. So remember, adverbs add to the verb. They modify the verb in the same way that an adjective modifies or changes a noun, makes it more specific. So an adjective does the same for a verb. So he didn't just answer her, he answered her kindly. And so note how we can change that by changing the adverb. We can change the manner in which he answered. He answered sharply. He answered loudly. He answered cruelly. Or he answered kindly. He answered gently. You see, so each one of those adverbs changes our perception of the manner in which he answered, whoever he is. And that's the job of an adverb. One thing to note is that adverbs usually add an ly. Not always, and I'll talk about the exceptions in just a slide or two, but they usually do. So we see from the examples here, he answered her kindly. She worked diligently. The bee flew quickly from flower to flower. he spoke angrily. You see that? So you see a pattern developing, right? For the most part, adjectives add the ly ending to the adjective. He was angry, the angry man. You see, that's the adjective form. He spoke angrily. Okay. She was brilliant. The brilliant girl. Okay. She played brilliantly. Okay. You see, so when we modify the verb, for the most part, we add the ly. There is a class of adverbs that don't take the ly ending, or don't always take the ly ending. Some of the adverbs kind of straddle the border between what we call the flat adverbs and what you might think of as the regular adverbs. But these might include words or phrases such as drive safe. You could also say drive safely. So you see, so that's a word that could go either way. But run fast is definitely a flat adverb. You could not say run fastly. That just wouldn't be allowed. Go slow or go slowly. Okay, but slow could be a flat adverb. Sleep tight. You would never say sleep tightly. Okay, so tight in this sense to modify sleep would be a flat adverb. Hit hard. If the coach is exhorting his team, hit hard. That would be a flat adverb. You couldn't say hit hardly. In the same way, work hard. Work hard. The hard would be modifying work, right? So then it's an adverb because it's modifying the verb. But you could not say hardly. You'd have to say work hard. Fly high. You would not say fly highly. You see, so the high in this sense is always a flat adverb. And lastly, we have the slogan, the advertising slogan, think different, which is not a usual usage. Usually, one would say think differently, but the advertisers wanted to think different, and so they used a flat adverb form of the adverb or the adjective different and used the flat adverb form of the word. Okay. This form, lastly, just a little historical note, used to be more common than it is now. The Bible gives us such a phrase as exceeding glad. Nowadays we say exceedingly glad, exceedingly glad. But when the writers of the King James Bible in the 1600s wrote the passage, they wrote exceeding glad. Shakespeare, about the same time actually, wrote in Richard II, marvelous great. We would now write marvelously great, but Shakespeare didn't feel a need to add the ly. Okay. And a little bit later, Robinson Crusoe, writing, or as Daniel Defoe wrote in his novel, Robinson Crusoe, the sea went dreadful high. And again, dreadful is being used as a flat adverb there. We would again write today, dreadfully high. Anyway, so here's this class of adverbs that are flat, sometimes always flat, and sometimes according to the situation or according to the particular usage. So over here to the side here, I have a list of ways that adverbs indicate or that they modify. They give direction, edgewise, sideways, extent, completely, wholly, frequency, always, annually, seldom, sometimes the instrument, microscopically, sometimes location, regionally, worldwide, time, early, sometimes, today, yesterday, the modality, maybe, necessarily, perhaps, possibly, probably. So these are all adjectives. And the thing to remember here is they are not always apparently connected to the verb. Okay, so it's not the same type of adjective as to drive quickly or to drive fast. But they are modifying the verb. So yesterday he went to school. You see, so yesterday modifies went. Doesn't modify he. Okay, it modifies went. When did he go to school? When did he go to school? Okay, well, we're not saying who went to school. We know who went to school. When did he go to school? He went to school yesterday. So that type of word modifies the verb. Adverbs also modify the modifiers. Okay, so if you have a word modifying a modifier, either an adverb or an adjective, what you call that word that's doing the modifying of the modifier is an adverb. Okay, so playing with tigers is extremely dangerous. Okay, so note that dangerous is an adjective. It's being modified by extremely. Extremely is an adverb. Okay, it's not just dangerous, it's extremely dangerous. Okay, that soup is not just hot, it is very hot. The very is an adverb. It's modifying hot. Are you completely sure? Completely modifies sure. Sure being an adjective. Completely would be an adverb. That movie was exceedingly boring. Okay, again, exceedingly is modifying boring. She is quite stunning. Okay, quite modifies stunning. My professor is rather boring. This lecture is rather boring. Okay, the rather would be an adverb. He runs very fast. Okay, you see, so he runs very fast. He runs fast. The fast is an adverb. The very is modifying the adverb. So the adverb can also modify another adverb. I've given you several examples where it's modifying the adjective, but it can also modify an adverb. She studies diligently. You see, so or she studies very diligently. I want to emphasize, it's not just diligently, it's very diligently. Okay, so the word that is modifying a adjective or an adverb is also an adverb. Note that adverbial phrases and clauses also exist, and so you have phrases and clauses that function as adverbs, even though we have identified them earlier as other forms. And so in the first example, my mother was born in a tiny cabin in the mountains of New Mexico. Okay, so here we have a series of prepositional phrases that are modifying the verb. Okay, born. Where was she born? In a tiny cabin. Where? In the mountains. Where? Of New Mexico. Okay, so these prepositional phrases are also known as adverbial phrases because they're modifying the verb. So I picked my way carefully over the rocks to avoid falling. So again, we have the infinitive phrase to avoid falling, and it's modifying how I picked my way or why I picked my way in that manner. Okay, so that's an adverbial phrase. Now, the wrestlers worked out until they could hardly stand. So here we have a clause. Remember, a clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate. And this is also known as a subordinate clause because it started with one of the wabbits, one of the subordinate conjunctions, until they could hardly stand. But that is modifying working out, the worked out idea in the sentence. Okay, so adverbial phrases and clauses also modify the verb. There is a group of adverbs that causes a little bit of difficulty because sometimes we confuse exactly how to use them. First, I'll show you how they should be used. Okay, so we see some sample sentences over here. Every summer, we usually go to the beach. However, this year we're staying home. So notice that however is in a separate sentence by itself. The judge found the Wall Street bankers guilty of defrauding investors. Therefore, that's the conjunctive adverb, the judge sentenced them to the maximum penalty prescribed by law. Okay, so therefore is a conjunctive adverb. And so it's an adverb. and it modifies the verb, but it also joins in a sense. It creates a logical connection between that which preceded and that which follows. Okay, so Rodriguez closed down his legal practice 20 years ago. He has, nevertheless, continued to work pro bono on cases for the poor. Pro bono means for free. Okay, so anyway, that nevertheless is the conjunctive adverb. You see how it creates a logical relationship between closing down the legal practice and continuing to work. Okay, first get an education, then, you see that's the conjunctive adverb, then you'll have the opportunity to do what you wish to with your life. Okay, then. Okay, so these are the conjunctive adverbs, and there's a few more, and you can read more about them in the text, but this gives you an idea about what they are and how they work. These conjunctive adverbs are sometimes called the false conjunctions, because it's very easy for us to confuse them with the regular conjunctions, with the true conjunctions. They show a logical relationship, sometimes a cause and effect relationship, such a word as therefore. Sometimes they show opposition, such as however does. But it is to remember that they're not conjunctions, and you can't use them as conjunctions, because if you do, you end up committing probably a sentence error, such as the comma splice or the run-on sentence, which, as we stated a few lessons ago, is a egregious error, a very bad thing to do. Okay, so anyway, so these are the false conjunctions, and we'll take a look at how it is that they are so and how it is that we should use them. So the false conjunctions have a meaning that's similar to the true conjunctions, and take a look at however, the word however, which is one of the false conjunctions, one of the conjunctive adverbs. So you see that in the example that I have over here, the correct example would be Tommy got a home run, period, full stop. However, we still lost the game. Well, I could also write the same idea, practically the same idea. Tommy got a home run, comma, but we lost the game. So notice that the but places the second clause in the same sentence that we start with a second sentence in the first example when we use however. Okay, so they have a similar meaning. And I think that's one of the areas that we get confused as to their function. Now, a very common error that I see in student writing especially is using such a word as however as if it were a true conjunction. So remember, it's a false conjunction, it's not a true conjunction. And we have an example here. Tommy got a home run, comma, however he still lost the game. So notice the comma places the second clause, however we still lost the game, in the same sentence as the first clause. But we're using the however as if it were a conjunction. It's not. This is incorrect. This is wrong. Okay. And in the next slide, I'll explain why and how it is wrong. The conjunctive adverb does not work the same way as the conjunction does. The false conjunction does not work the same way that the true conjunction does. And I'll just demonstrate this with a simple example. So we could write, Tommy got a home run, but we lost the game. Okay, so notice that's one sentence with the two clauses joined by the coordinating conjunction but. But notice that we could write using the word however, Tommy got a home run, period. However, we lost the game. We could write Tommy got a home run, we, however, lost the game. Or Tommy got a home run, period, again. We lost the game, however. Okay, we lost the game, however. Okay, so notice how however as an adverb can move around the sentence. You can't do that with but, and I'll show that in the next slide. So remembering from this slide before how we can move however up and down the sentence. The true conjunction cannot do that. It has to begin, the true conjunction has to begin the clause. So we could write Tommy got a home run, but we lost the game. So that sounds all right. but it would be incorrect for us to write Tommy got a home run, we still but lost the game. Or Tommy got a home run, we still lost the game, but. See, that does not work at all. Whereas we could write, we still, however, lost the game. We, however, lost the game. You see, so the however can move around. It's an adverb, even though it provides a relationship between what went before and what will follow. It is not a conjunction proper. Okay, so the true conjunction and the false conjunction don't work the same way. And so that's why you cannot use the false conjunction, the conjunctive adverbs, as if they were true conjunctions. And in the text, you'll see a list of these conjunctive adverbs. The words such as however, nevertheless, moreover, therefore, thus, words like that, that cannot be used as conjunctions, even though they perform a logical function very similar to conjunctions, but you have to be careful. Just one more word about the conjunctive adverb. And this is about how we can properly use them. Okay, so we know now that we cannot use the conjunctive adverb, the false conjunction, as if it were a conjunction. So we cannot say, as we see in the first sentence example over here, we traveled to England, then we hopped over the channel to France. As a matter of fact, there might even be some confusion if you wrote that, because how do you know, or how does the reader know that it's not we traveled to England then? We hopped over the channel to France. I mean, so you're not quite sure which way to read it. But beyond that, it does not work. The word then does not work as a conjunction. So there are some possible alternative ways to write this pair of sentences, or these two ideas, that are correct. And so we see the first one, we traveled to England and then we hopped over the channel to France. And so you use the conjunctive adverb with a conjunction proper, and then. See, so you can't use then by itself as a conjunction, but you can use it in combination with a conjunction. Or you could just make a full stop. You could create two sentences. We traveled to England, period. Then we hopped over the channel to France. Okay, so you just begin a whole new sentence, or something very similar to that. In the last example, we traveled to England, semicolon, and I'll get to the rules on the semicolon when we get to punctuation, but we traveled to England, semicolon, then we hopped over the channel to France. And so the semicolon provides a full stop, and then you begin what is essentially a sentence by itself afresh. Okay, so then we hopped over the channel to France. So you see some different ways that we can use the conjunctive adverb properly, and the one way that we cannot. So those are the adjectives and adverbs. And while they are not the root in the trunk of the sentence, such as the nouns and the verbs, they do in very important ways shape, modify, color, limit, and expand our understanding of what is being said in the sentence. So as before, I'll remind you and urge you to take a look at the text, to do the check your knowledge exercise, and of course to post any questions that you might have regarding the adjectives and adverbs in the chat area, in the question area. And with that, I will bid you a fond adieu until we meet again.